Hey guys, Brass Facts here, back in the Influencer studio because I forgot to bring my notes out and I didn't want to go drive back out and do it again. So instead, you get the Influencer studio adorned with the worst editing software ever conceived by man. We buy all of these fancy guns, these flashlights, night vision devices, laser aiming modules, radios, blah, 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 blah. We buy all of this stuff and we admit to ourselves, hey, these things are probably only going to be used in disasters, and pretty spicy disasters at that. And the thing with disasters is it tends to partially or outright remove utilities, and one of those utilities is gritty electricity. Why do I keep saying electricity like that? As such, an important logistical question you need to ask yourself as a prepared citizen is, how do I get power when there's no power? That's what we're going to cover today. I'm going to cover a number, mainly 3 different types of options I've kind of used over the years, and some quite recently, on generating power when the grid is down. And because unless you have an RTG lying around, really the only realistic way to achieve that is going to be solar. So that's what we're going to talk about today. Solar generation for kind of SHTF, starting from the very small budget to the medium, to the outright ludicrous and expensive setups. That being said, because I paid for all of this and I've never even interacted with a single one of these companies, actually except one of them where I applied to them right out of college and they declined my resume. It's the one in Utah. I feel comfortable putting affiliate links down below, at least for the things that I've bought. Whatever. Okay, on with the show.
So the one we gotta cover first has to be by far the most popular. It's the portable power generation combo of a USB solar panel and a basic cell phone battery bank. I see these added to bug-out bags, rucks, and more as this mandatory tactical infinite power source glitch. And hey, I get the appeal. There's some real satisfaction of micromanaging your energy out in the sticks and living off the land, basically, essentially being able to subsist forever in some cases. And hey, I've used this setup in both emergencies and regular use over the last, 10 years. My specific model of choice is the big blue 28 watt, 4.8 amp, 5 volt setup thing. The sales pitch is quite simple. It's a cheap solar panel you pair with a small cell phone style battery bank, or generally 2 or 3, such that you can keep one always charging and one outputting power, and you're able to supply power to anything that works within the USB ecosystem. Cell phones, 18650s, radios like the Baofeng with the extended battery, or even an XTS 2500 with a USB capable battery pack. And with the addition of rechargeable CR123s, we can extend this utility to anything that uses CR123. So our laser aiming modules, optics, lights, lasers, and more, all on paper are able to be sustained indefinitely by a USB cable, a battery bank, and a single 28 watt panel. Interlude from editing Brass Facts here, might as well get this quickly out of the way. I actually use rechargeable CR123s a lot, and that might be foreign to some people because I don't think it's generally common practice, so let me give you some of my experience. The Olight ones work just fine. There are a number of other brands that work well as well, and they work very excellently to kind of just mitigate the unrelenting amount of battery consumption that all of our gear tends to use and kind of save you that $2 to $3 every time you run out of a flashlight. I want to point out, these are not wholesale replacements for non-rechargeable CR123s like Streamlights or Surefires or whatever. And the big reason for that is, well, they kind of suck in all regards. For starters, they are worse than basically any other battery in the cold. They almost don't work at all, or if they do, you're going to be popping these things in and out nonstop. Number 2, their capacity is reduced significantly after the first or second or third or whatever charge, and yeah, they're just going to run out significantly faster. Finally, and perhaps worst of all, they tend to be overvolted at 3.7 volts instead of the standard 3 volt. Is there a reason for this? I don't know. But the point is, you put this in a flashlight or a headlamp and you'll notice a massive uptick in, well, light output, which is kind of useful if you're kind of just taking one of your shitty handhelds and want to give it a nice boost to light, as well as save batteries, but it's not something I want to put into, say, a PVS-14 that can take a CR123 or other devices that we care about, say, your laser aiming module. In practice, while I found this setup works great for maintaining our smaller items and maybe one high draw item like a cell phone, it very quickly begins to degrade when we add multiple high draw devices like a radio, cell phone, or maybe even something like a camera. And you're going to quickly find yourself in a power deficit. A power deficit, that is when you bring in less power than you are using, and then your reserve of power, the power that we carry in our battery banks, begins to dwindle to zero. This is a problem because A, we're out of power, and B, we need that power reserve to kind of handle days where solar power is less effective. All that aside, for in-field purposes, I have not used this setup in quite a long time. It's not bad, it's just not necessary. This thing right here is small and represents a month of power for small draw items, and when you run out of power, you can swap to it in seconds. Probably don't buy this specific one. It's a Thyrum battery case, way too expensive, but it really satiated my autism with the organizational stuff. And this thermal device over here, for example, takes well over an hour to charge, uses a huge percentage of our battery reserve, when instead I could just put a new battery in when it runs out of battery. This isn't to say we forsake solar in its entirety. In fact, leaving these at home to continually charge batteries is a great way to kind of keep those battery stocks going without reaching for dedicated non-rechargeable batteries. And in non-emergencies, they provide great utility while camping, glamping style to keep up camera equipment, cell phones, and whatever over the course of, say, a 3 to 4 day camping trip. But what I am saying from a preparedness standpoint, having one of these in your pack is really kind of silly in practice, and it doesn't work nearly as well as you think, especially when the alternative is for way less size, weight, and bulk, you can easily just bring enough batteries for several weeks of operations, if not more, and just be done with the hassle without having to rely on micromanaging a solar panel. So, if we're admitting to ourselves we almost never want to use these in the field, it quickly becomes apparent that for home, static usage, we should probably look elsewhere for a more purpose-built setup. This little fellow right here is an Anker 521, really doesn't cost all that much more than our previous setup, and holds basically 10x the amount of power provided by that previous setup. Double the price, double the power, you get this EcoFlow 2. Or even bigger yet, with something like this Goal Zero 1500X, which as the name implies, has 1500 watt-hours of X-rated power. All of these generally have a large uptick in voltage as well, allowing a minimum of a 12 volt out, as well as a standard 20 volt AC plug, so you're not as limited as we were with the portable USB setups, which, take it from me, is extremely liberating to go from preparedness setups that was tied to the hip permanently to USB cables only, to now just being able to use whatever you use right now. Generally, from what I understand, Anker, EcoFlow, Jackery, Blue Eddy, all of them are okay, I guess. It's really hard to tell because it's hard to buy every single brand and, compare them side by side, and the Google results that have reviews are all just astroturfed by AI ranking blogs, which rank insanely well on search engine optimization. Speaking of which, that is the exact same reason every food recipe blog comes with a 3-page life story on how to cook baked potatoes. Holy fucking shit, where are the instructions? Check out this guy, he's a pretty good source for actual product reviews. Yeah, go check them out if you really want to deep dive in this stuff. Okay, back to our battery. These alone can serve as a solid backbone for very short-term preparedness, or just provide utility, once again, when you go out with your car and you just want to keep your devices going in the short term. And I often use these to keep camera equipment going, laptops to transfer footage, and of course drones for several charges, if not more. Where these really shine in a preparedness setup is when you deploy them with a typically bundled solar panel. For example, I have this EcoFlow setup, which Magic Pepper, by the way, gave me. Dude, what a bro. Thanks. And it replaced my older setup, which was struggling to even hold a charge. Now we have access to 160 watts, up from 28 watts of semi-portable solar, which can stow away in a closet or a car, but then deploy as needed. If you are going to buy one of these, it's worth noting we're sort of in a DeWalt, Ryobi, Milwaukee Civil War power tool situation, and whatever brand you do buy, understand you are now obligated to defend that brand to the death online. Because admitting you're wrong and switching brands means your $500 proprietary power tool batteries are now useless. Same rough deal here. While there is a little bit more overlap, generally speaking, all of this stuff is incredibly proprietary, so once you buy a brand, you're locked into their ecosystem, their cables, their solar panel interfaces, and more. So choose wisely. Running the setup, I found you can run small to medium draw devices, up from just small devices like night vision, radio, cell phones, basically indefinitely with zero stress at all, even with fairly limited sun. The power draw of these things are so small compared to even one good day of sun, and the battery reserve is so large that you can go weeks without a charge and not be stressed at all. Very limited usage of tablets and smaller laptops can be done as well, as long as you don't fall to the temptation to watch an entire season of Scrubs. Heavier usage, like extended time on a computer or powering a small tiny mini fridge or actual multi-hour work sessions, is mostly beyond what this panel can handle. That being said, I had a week-long power outage during a school and work week, and I was able to first move critical files from my desktop to a laptop, and then work about 3 to 4 days via aggressively managing the sleep function on the laptop and prolific use of pen and paper. I even watched a bit of YouTube via my phone's hotspot and powered gun weapon lights to keep my house lit. But really, it's an emergency power, and while capable, it's extremely limited, mostly due to the portable solar panel size being still on the small end when we kind of get in this more standard usage. So let's take it a step further. The battery power is fine, we can go bigger, but what's really limiting us is that solar panel. Let's go all out and get a fixed solar panel. So, talking about midlife crisis, I bought a van and then threw on a 5,000 watt-hour battery and an 800 watt solar bolted to the roof. And at first glance, this setup is very, 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 very expensive compared to our previous setup on energy usage alone. And you'd be correct, this was not cheap. But this leaves out a very important aspect of solar panel usage that I've glossed over in this video. Most solar panels do not get even close to the actual designated output that it says on the tin, and the smaller you go, the more true this gets. Those little backpack panels from earlier basically require a full blast sun, otherwise they're going to charge at rates lower than a lot of devices can handle. I would not be surprised if this thing peaks at 15 watts, but it's typically going to be 10 watts or less. I don't know. It's hard to tell. You can't really meter this thing. The larger foldable ones are quite decent, and if the machine readout is to be believed, they're hitting anywhere from 50 to 75 watts on average on a really good day. I've sometimes seen 100, but very often you're also only getting about 30, 35 in what might seem to you as a decently bright day. Finally, my in-place panels are hitting somewhere around 50% of the rated value, typically 375 to 400 on a really good blazing hot day, admittedly in the winter. I haven't actually owned this in the summer where the sun is going to be directly overhead, which is important, right? The direction of the sun does influence how effective your solar panels are, and I imagine we'd see an uptick in performance there.
So we're in the Brock van, often called the Brookmobile. If it looks a little live, laugh, lovey, it's because I bought it mostly set up. We got to replace this with literally anything else, maybe a patch wall. So with the power provided from what we just saw earlier, we have access to, or we can power a double freezer fridge setup, right? They're individually configurable. I usually run one as a freezer, one as a fridge. We have running water runs right here, which is activated like so. Access to a full sink from the provided power. And a sewage system connected to that. As well as you can see, we have lighting all around, controlled by built-in knobs. We have multiple power outlets, some here, some hidden in the corner. Most interestingly, however, is the addition of a full computer setup in here. We have a speaker, monitor, keyboard, and a pretty high-end laptop, kind of not bolted permanently, but affixed to the bottom of the table here, all being powered from the thing above. This kind of ended up just being a video to show off the van, didn't it? Yeah.
Because I got this van set up so I could travel for the channel for multiple weeks on end, I've regularly practiced with this thing in scenarios where I get zero power input. And it's quite realistically to function indefinitely while using the laptop quite heavily, easily the largest draw power source next to the fridge. Should I remove the heavy use of the laptop as I would in an actual emergency, I could probably substitute it for a small 800 watt induction stove cooktop and maybe cook one meal a day with it. Once again, indefinitely assuming I get a lot of sun. And that's sort of the goal of preparedness, right? We've kindly crossed the threshold with this setup, going from survival to actually having a decent quality of life enabled by the power of black magic energy. And this setup by far is on the conservative side of things. You can do some really impressive setup if you're willing to whip out the cash. That's the show. Remember, this is what I did. There are a bunch of different ways to skin the cat. My friend, for example, did basically the exact same off-grid solution throughout the realm, and outside of the backpack solution, all of his stuff ended up actually being custom. This is kind of a huge pain in the ass if you don't know what you're doing, but if you do, you get customization, repairability. It's going to be far cheaper and more efficient, but once again, requires a higher level of electronics autism that I'm not able to provide here. I barely passed my electronic class after all. Before I send you off, let's talk about patch time and my dog, Nova.
Okay, I'll keep this real quick, but I think it's important to cover since it is sort of a critical part of the channel, the most important part of the channel, and that is my dog, Nova. Some of you have heard that I had to miss Moons Out this year, 2025, because my dog was having issues. To keep it short, Went into the doctor to get her knee repaired because it was looking pretty bad, and it was a big reason why I couldn't do rucks and hiking for most of 2024. Didn't want to leave the dog behind, so we kept things pretty simple, and we were going in to get that repaired. It was going to be incredibly expensive to do so, hence why I made a bunch of patches, and we'll get to that in a second to cover it. But during this process, we discovered a much worse issue, lots of blood in her abdomen, turns out her heart, and I find this kind of ironic given her personality being a very lovey dog, was literally so big it was killing her. And it was leaking into her abdomen. And at that rate, the heart had a feedback loop of needing to work harder and harder. Eventually, she would go into cardiac arrest in 6 months to like 8 months. So we put her on medicine, and obviously at this point I decided, because this was happening during Moon's Out, I decided not to go to deal with the pupper, because she's as much of a shithead as she is sometimes. I do kind of like her. It's not entirely solved yet. She is on medicine, and there's no more blood in her abdomen, which means, or her body, I guess. I don't really remember exactly what it was. She's in good shape, right? She's not going to keel over anytime soon. We're still unsure if the medicine is truly holding, so to speak, right? It's reduced the effect. We don't know if her heart's going to shrink back to the normal size again, or at least that's how I was been told. So yeah, that was a very long and expensive process, why I missed the thing, and why my dog was a bit in limbo there for a bit. On that note, I mentioned this. This patch, the regular Derp Nova patch, I didn't make enough of them for SHOT Show. I ran out day one on handing these things out. They went all away, and I sold out within a couple hours. This is by far my favorite looking patch we've ever created, so I did another batch of those. We also, or me, right? Actually, no, I got help with this one. Thanks, Boondock Ballistician, with your amazing MS Paint skills. This one was also made as kind of a hurt Derp Nova patch, and the logic was it would kind of help pay for the medical bills that she's going through right now. I want to be absolutely fucking clear. All the medical bills are already paid for. I can afford it. I have emergency savings. I'm a fucking grown-ass adult. I can afford to take care of my dog. I don't need the internet to help me take care of my dog. She's fine, right? This is not me having a GoFundMe of, oh my God, go save my dog. No, it was just a cute little patch idea that we did that would help, soften the cost of her knee surgery, which unfortunately she hasn't had yet. We actually aborted that. Don't buy this patch if you are doing this because you think Nova will not survive if you don't do this. She's fine. I've already paid for it. Don't do it that way. Cool.
It's fun to see. How asleep are you, Nova? Doge. Oh, she awakens. Hello. Good morning. Good morning. You want pets? Does Nova want pets? Hello. Hello. Yep. Tasteful thickness.
Okay, so this plate is Fast Fire 3.
Alright, hold on. I gotta buy an optic plate, Nova. I'll be back.
Is